Well, good morning. How are you all today? And welcome to American Reversion. Well, are you tired of winning yet? You remember that old saying by Trump? If you don't realize that we are winning a lot, you haven't been paying attention. You've been looking at things through smoke-colored glasses instead of clear. We shouldn't look through rose-colored glasses, but we need to see things clearly for what they are. And if you've been paying attention, you see that a lot of things are starting to come back the right way. Is this an American reversion? Well, I hope so. I don't know. I won't say that it is because the political pendulum, swings, and sometimes it swings too far one way, and then that sets it up for too far the other. And you never can tell. Where you think the pendulum is depends on what moment you're looking at it and where it is on its swing one way or another. But we are seeing a lot of things coming our way. If you've watched the decisions that have just been handed down by the Supreme Court, there have been some excellent ones. The ones having to do with presidential immunity. If you've seen that now they have postponed Trump's sentencing, and it wasn't even opposed by the New York Attorney General or whoever was prosecuting attorney. I forget who was prosecuting that. It was not opposed by the prosecutors, and giving him extended time to put in a request to overturn his conviction because of this decision by the Supreme Court. That is a win. That is huge. There have been problems. Investigations are finally bringing out some results into Jack Smith, into the New York trials, and into the trials down in Georgia. That's going to be interesting to watch. Trump continues to win. He's on his way. We will see. Let me ask you this. Are you ready, and are you ready to do your part to make America great again? Remember, I showed you that yesterday. Yeah, that's our new mug, now available on the website if you'd like one. Link is down below. But I said the other day, or yesterday, I guess it was, this is the fighter. There are other fighters out there. Steve Bannon reported to prison yesterday. Did you see what he said before he went in? And I'm going to say something here in a minute about those who will not fight. Before he went into reported to prison for his 4-month sentence, there was a priest there from a local church who said, told him, Steve, I'll pray for you, and our parish is right here. I'll make sure that you have everything you need. You know what Bannon said? He said, don't pray for me, pray for our enemies. They're the ones who are going to need prayers. I had a rather rude comment yesterday by a young man who chastised me for being a pastor and relying on and being involved or interested or relying on something on politics, whether right or left. That is indicative of those who will not fight back, who will not take a position, but who practice a lazy kind of religion. Now, I'm you know how I feel about my beliefs if you've been with me before. We put everything in God's hand. We ask for His direction. We ask for His support. But then we do our part. We do what He tells us to do. This country was established by those seeking religious freedom. It was established by those who sought the direction of providence, meaning God, to direct this country in its birth and in its growth. Nothing good is done outside the will of God. Let us be very clear with that. Okay? And if you've read the Bible, especially the Old Testament, I say that, don't worry, this isn't going to be religious, but I'm going to say this. For those people, and I hate this kind of lazy Christianity that says, I'm not going to do anything, I don't take a position, I don't take it this, I don't take it that. It's all in God's hands, whatever God wants to do. Yes, that's right. Whatever God wants to do, he will do. But sometimes he tells us, now here's what you're supposed to do, and here's what you're supposed to do, and here's what you're supposed to do. And some people get up there and do it, and others go, oh, I'm just going to let God do it. And God's going to say, well, I told you to do this. Well, I'm just going to let you do it, Lord. Okay. Lazy Christianity, lazy whatever religion, and we have a lot of lazy citizenship out there too, who, like I said yesterday, would just rather grumble on things they've done their part than stand up and actually do something. Well, we have people standing up and actually doing something, and if you think that he's controlled opposition, you're brainwashed or you're just lazy. So, did I just offend somebody out there? You probably needed to be offended. Okay? Yeah. Oh, you know what? Sometimes pastors speak straight, right? Jesus did, right? You vipers. Okay, I'm not going to get into that. Brood of vipers. Why has our country been able to devolve to the point it is now? Okay, I want to step off here to the side for a moment and ask, is this a reversion coming? Because we just have a lot of things coming our way. I mean, one of the greatest gifts wasn't it Biden's performance in his debate the other day? And I guess Jill and Hunter are really wanting him to stay in the race. He doesn't know whether he's staying in the race. He probably doesn't know he's in a race, But Jill wants him in because, well, she likes the power, right? She's a Hillary. People don't realize that. But she's not as smart as Hillary. Not nearly as smart. But she wants him to stay in because she wants to stay being first lady. She wants to keep living in the people's house up there and having everything done for her and bossing him around. And he's the perfect foil, apparently. Hunter wants him in there so that he can, so Dad can continue to protect him. When Biden goes down, boy, the whole house of cards could be starting to go down. Now, interestingly enough, they've been talking about from the retribution side. They're afraid, the Democrats are afraid of retribution. Well, they use that word because it carries with it a negative connotation. It's not retribution, it's justice. And to be honest, the Republicans have not been good in dispensing justice over the years. They have not. They've let things go. It's just like what happens when you don't discipline a child. You just get more bad behavior, and that's what happened with the country. The Democrats were the screaming, pouting, foot-stomping children, and the Republicans were the absent parents who didn't put a stop to it. Maybe we'll get some stronger ones up there. But we will see. But they had better, like Bannon said, pray for our enemies. They're the ones who are going to need it. I hope that happens. And I know, I see you right there tapping on your keyboard. They'll never do anything. I get you, man. I understand. Half of me says exactly what you're saying. But I have another half, and that is a half of hope. Maybe I should just say I have a half of hope. I have a little bit of hope that something will actually happen, and the only one who will do it is this guy. Are you familiar with anti-federalism? Many of you probably are. Many of you probably aren't. And there's nothing wrong with that because it's not something that, it probably hasn't been discussed unless you were a history major in your since your high school history class. And there was probably half a page that you skipped over because anti-federalist, it didn't zoom you in, it didn't draw you in. And yet it was the victory of the Federalists over the Anti-Federalists that set up the whole failure of the United States. Would you like to know what anti-federalism is? Because I bet you are one. Okay, and it's important that you be one. So rather than me just trying to explain it, in which I would just lay out the basics, I'm going to read from Wiki here, and it's a very good article. and it's going to explain a lot. By the time I'm done reading this, you're going to understand anti-federalism, why it's important, why it's right, why you are one, and why you should do everything you can to spread its precepts. Okay? Are you ready for that? Don't worry, this isn't going to be boring. You're going to be saying, yeah, through the whole thing. Okay. Anti-federalism was a late 18th century political movement that opposed the creation of a stronger U.S. federal government. Are you already excited? Are you already with me on this? Opposed the establishment or creation of a strong U.S. federal government, and which later opposed the ratification of the 1787 Constitution. Now, many people would say, what, opposed the Constitution? Aren't we constitutionalists? Shouldn't we support the Constitution? Man, I've got a sticker on the back of my the window of my pickup truck that says Constitution, right? We the people. Well, that's a different game. but it's thought of in the same way. No. I am not a constitutionalist. I've thought that the Constitution was the seed that was planted to create what's happening here. I was much more for the Articles of Confederation, which they're going to talk about in a second. If you're not familiar with the Articles, you should study them. And actually, I talk a lot about this in my books. If you've read my books, you've heard me. If you haven't, why not? You'd learn a lot and you'd love them. Links down below. The previous Constitution, called the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union, gave state governments more authority. Led by Patrick Henry of Virginia, remember Patrick Henry? Give me liberty or give me death. Anti-Federalists worried, among other things, that the position of president, then a novelty, because remember back then it was mainly monarchs, kings and queens and stuff, might evolve into a monarchy. Well, a monarchy, you mean like a guy who can run things with executive orders? Uh-huh. Though the Constitution was ratified and supplanted the Articles of Confederation, the Anti-Federalist influence helped lead to the passage of the Bill of Rights. Okay, are you all for the Bill of Rights? First Amendment, Second Amendment, Third Amendment, Fourth Amendment. Most people don't know what the Third and Fourth Amendments were, or most of the others, but the First and the Second, pretty much everybody, understands. The name Anti-Federalist is a misnomer. It was imposed upon the movement by their opponents, the Federalists. Right, you would think. And was supposed to mark them as men who stood against the very political ideas they embraced. According to historian Carol Berkin, perhaps the nationalists' most brilliant tactic in the battle of ideas ahead of them, however, was their decision to call themselves Federalists, with their cause federalism. The men behind the Constitution were not, of course, Federalists at all. Kind of like Democrats, right? And their consistent drumbeat about they're threatening our democracy. And most Americans are sadly ignorant of what democracy is and don't realize that we live in a republic. But, this is why words mean things and matter. They were advocates of a strong national government whose authority diminished the independence of the states. By co-opting the name Federalists, the pro-Constitution forces deprived their opponents of the ability to signal clearly and immediately what they stood for. That's right. Let me read a little bit further. The Anti-Federalists were against the ratification of the Constitution for many reasons. The Anti-Federalists believed that the Constitution, as drafted, would lead to a loss of individual liberties, an erosion of state sovereignty, and the potential for the rise of tyranny. All true. The Anti-Federalists knew exactly what they were talking about. Could I step in here and just ask, because you see where this is going. This is a real lesson in not only how our country was established, our Constitution was established, but why it allowed our country to go the way that it has. So may I ask you to share this? Send this to other people. Most people don't know this. I've come to find out, sadly. Most people don't know this. And it is an informed citizenry that is important and vital to the proper function of government. Okay, so please send this to people and give it a like if you would. I guess it helps. We need to support this as much as we can, these messages, whether it comes from me or anyone else. Okay, let's go on here. They advocated for a more decentralized form of government with greater protections for individual rights and stronger representation for the states. Right, so that all of these made-up departments that aren't constitutional to begin with, the Department of Education, the Department of Energy, the Department of this and that, and the Department of Hurt Feelings, whatever, that they can't pass all their little rules, internal rules, and enforce them as if they were laws. This is what the Supreme Court's decision is starting to back up. You think that elections don't have consequences, federal elections? The reason that the Supreme Court, has been passing down many excellent decisions now is because of this guy. The guy that so many out there said, well, he's just controlled opposition. He's just like the rest of them. No, he reconfigured the Supreme Court to start getting this country back on track. If you don't know that's what's happening, you need to start reading some more. Paying attention. Principally, I continue now, they were afraid that the national government would be too robust, right, and would thus threaten states and individual rights. Yes. How about all those guys that are still in for J6, right? You realize that the Supreme Court, changed by him, is reversing a lot of these decisions concerning the J6 guys, right? In the broad anti-federalist sense, they held that states should be significantly autonomous, right, and independent in their authority, applying the right to self-administration in all significant internal matters without the unwanted interjections of the federal government. The Anti-Federalists debated with their Federalist colleagues, including Alexander Hamilton and James Madison, on the functional model and competencies of the planned federal government. The Anti-Federalists believed that almost all the executive power should be left to the country's authorities, meaning the states, okay, while the Federalists wanted centralized national governments. They also believed that a large central government would not serve the interests of small towns and rural areas, as opposed to the urban interests that most Federalist delegates aligned with. Right. That's why our country, our elections, our national elections are too often decided by those few blue areas, the cities, made up of people who make, many of whom make their money from, or get their money, they don't make it, from government checks, either being government employees or recipients of our money through government programs. Okay. So it was the Federalists who set all this up. Generally, Anti-Federalists were more likely to be small farmers than lawyers and merchants, and came from rural areas rather than the urban areas many Federalists represented. In their journey to protect the interests of rural areas and farmers, the Anti-Federalists believed, listen to these, they believed the Constitution as written would be oppressive. I know that's a shock to many people. No, it's the Constitution that protects our rights. No, it doesn't. The Constitution sets up internally the chance of oppression. Okay? It is the seed of potential oppression, and it has come about. They believed the Constitution needed a Bill of Rights to clarify some of the things that were left out, that weren't included in the Constitution. They believed the Constitution created a presidency so powerful that it would become a monarchy. How about all of the things that, now you can say that Trump did, yes, he put out some executive orders. How about all the executive orders? This country was changed by the executive orders of Barack Obama. And it has changed even more under the executive orders of Stumbles Biden. Okay? Stumble? Should we call him Stumbles or Mumbles? I mean, both would apply, but you can't put both together. Mumbles, stumbles, stumbles, mumbles. It's just too much, right? So either way works. Pooper? Pooper? Mumbles the Pooper? You know, if he were a crime family head, or if he is, right? Of course he is. Yeah, his mob name would be Mumbles the Pooper. You know what I mean? You know what I'm referring to, right? And for the guy that said, "Don't you ever smile?" And for the person that says, "For a pastor, you can get kind of mean." No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm using these. Call evil evil. I said the other day, I was talking to some friends. Some friends were over to the house. One of them was a very smart guy, very accomplished guy. Rose through the high levels of special forces. Left there to go through the high levels of one of the, I won't say which organization, one of the main federal organizations. I might even say the main federal organization. I'm just not going to name it here, okay? Went very high, became second in command of one of their very special organizations. And he said, you know, he had found over the age, now this guy, he's my age now. He's a year younger than I am. He said through all he doesn't like people. And we were sitting around talking about, and I said, well, I like people. And one of the other guys said, no. Well, it doesn't matter. It's a complicated conversation that doesn't matter to you. So he says, well, after all these years, I've found that there's three kinds of people. There are evil people. There are bad people. And then there are some good people. And I said, yeah, I used to think that because that's all I ever dealt with. But I would put in another strata in there, and it would go between good and bad, and that is weak. Weak people. And that's why we have the problems we do. Okay. So those weak people who simply won't call a spade, who won't tell the truth, who say that you're kind of mean when you point these things out. If I'm not lying, then I'm telling the truth. Okay? Or if I'm giving an opinion, I'm giving an opinion based on the truth. If I'm telling the truth, you tell me the wrong in that. Well, but you're not being very nice. If you want to go back to another thing, was Christ always nice? Well, he was nice in the right. He was kind. Okay, nice is another misnomer. Nice is kind of an obsequious. Oh, I just want to be nice to get along. There's a big difference between nice and kind. I'm not always nice. I'm always kind, and I don't mean kind of nice. Kindness is that proper way that you act toward people, understanding, caring, having sympathy, empathy, the proper love for a fellow man. That's kindness. Christ was kind. Do you think that the money changers thought he was nice? Do you think that the Pharisees, who he called a brood of vipers, do you think they thought he was nice? Was that nice? Well, nice, right? It was true. Okay, so I don't want to hear any whining on here about any of that. It's time to stand up, stop being weak, and stand up and take a stand and be strong. You know, this country was built, like I said, it was built on the foundation of religion, shared religious beliefs, standards, and principles. And it was built much by its churches. Now the churches are tearing it down. But I get off track. They believed the Constitution provided insufficient rights in the courts, meaning no guarantee of juries in civil cases, nor that criminal case juries be local, and would create an out-of-control judiciary. Oh, an out-of-control judiciary. Like the judges who have been in charge of Trump's cases. They believed that the national government would be too far away from the people and thus unresponsive to the needs of localities. Exactly right. They were right. Again, see, you're an anti-federalist, and now you know it. They believed the Constitution would abrogate, at least in part, the power of the states. That means stealing from, taking. They believed the federal government's powers to tax, provided by the Constitution, could be used to exploit citizens and weaken the power of the states. Tell me that didn't happen. Okay, I could go on. Let's see. The Bill of Rights is a foundation of American democracy that outlines... Okay, I'm not going to go into that. You know what that is. A few of the... I'll go down here and tell you who a few of them were. There's a list here. I'll just tell you ones that most people would know. Patrick Henry, Samuel Adams, makes good beer. George Mason, Richard Henry Lee. If you don't know who these people are, look them up. You should know who they are. James Monroe, John Hancock, James Warren, James Winthrop. I think that's about all the ones. Samuel Bryan, and that's about it. The seeds of the collapse of this country were sown in the Constitution. And it was watered, oh boy, this is going to sound poetic, right? It was watered with the weakness of too many people for not understanding it, not standing up against those things that the Constitution allowed, which took away the rights of the individual and the states. And that's where we are. What's happening now in the courts, what's happening now in this sea change of opinion across our country, is mainly as a result of the debate. And finally, people are having a hard time explaining away Biden, right? It's really coming to a head. People are having to admit what they have long not wanted to admit. Not only is he senile, but he's wrong, and he's destroying the country. And we know whose hand is pulling his strings, right? The one who was bent on making a fundamental change in America. There's a saying: "Strike when the iron is white." You know, or when the iron is hot. You know where that comes from, right? The blacksmith. You got to strike it when the iron is hot. You wait till it cools off. You can't mold it. Right? We have to strike while the moment presents itself. The other side now is collapsing. If we do our part, like he is doing more than his, we have a chance to actually, at this point, turn this country back around. If we don't stand up, if not enough people stand up, we won't. If too many people, the people on either side of you out there, your friends, your family, whatever, if too many people continue to sit on the sidelines, to sit on the bench, grumbling, and don't participate, won't get up off of their asses to get out there and promote the proper ideals, we will lose the moment. We will lose the moment. And all this will fizzle out, and we'll go right back to worse than it was. You know, I was just reading something out of the Bible to the kids the other day at a Sunday church. And I said, when Jesus was speaking to the Pharisees, and he said, you pound the laws into people without understanding and practicing the meaning. You'll go 100 miles to make one convert and turn him into twice the son of hell he was. If we don't do this now, we will have lost the opportunity, and it may never come back. This is the time to do it. I remember that Hannity, I'm not a big fan of Hannity. He irritates me, but he does what he does. And a lot of times what he does pays off because he hammers. The reason I can't stand listening to him is he hammers the same thing every night, every night, every night. I mean, I already know that. I don't need to be hammered. Probably you don't either. But a lot of people don't. And that's the purpose that he serves. But he said many things that were exactly right. Years ago, he says, can you imagine waking up to hearing Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House? And it happened. He says, can you imagine waking up to hear that Barack Obama was elected president of the United States? And it happened. Can you imagine waking up, if we don't do our part, to find out that Joe Biden is the president of the United States? And it happened. And if we don't do our part, we're going to wake up. We're going to lose this moment. And we're going to wake up to hear again, Joe Biden has been reelected, or Michelle Obama has been elected president, or Hillary Clinton has been elected president, or Gavin Newsom, whatever like that. One man can't do the fight. It takes all of us. And we've hated what we've been going through. We've hated what's happened to our country. It's up to us to do what we can to straighten things out. Okay? If you want one of these mugs, go to the website, stonemont.us. I'm short on time. I got to go. I'm sure it'll be an interesting day today. We'll see what happens. Remember that America needs a reversion. It needs you to be a part of it. If you're not doing your part, you're helping the opposition. You are contributing to the continued failure of this country. Don't do that. Share this with your friends. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.